So what's up, y'all? Today we're here with Edgar. He'll be talking to us a little bit about the topic of machismo and a poem he plans on releasing and reciting sometime soon. So with us, Edgar, introduce yourself.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? So my name is Edgar. I'm a fourth year studying sociology and psychology. I've been doing poetry for around 6 years now. My poetry really touched base on social issues with personal identity. Overall, just targeting to bring awareness to issues that don't really get brought up in conversations, in large conversations in society.
Okay. I know I understand to my knowledge you're in college right now. You're actually graduating this year.
Yeah.
What will you be finishing with?
So yeah, like I said, I'll be finishing with a BA in sociology and psychology. And in terms of why I chose those two, a lot of it is from my passion of wanting to help people and bring awareness, especially in communities where there isn't a lot of resources and a lot of oppression. So take that knowledge that I've learned and go help individuals like myself who was once living there and going through a lot of challenges, how to overcome those.
Okay. So go ahead and start it. Why don't you go ahead and define what machismo is for those who might not exactly know?
Yeah, for real. So to me, there's more broad, there's more organized definitions, but definition to me looks, machismo is just a set of beliefs that are upheld by men, especially in a certain culture. It's a culture where you see a lot of patriarchy, a lot of one-sided stories mostly are heard from men where they're seen as the image figure of being strong or being the household breadwinner. Those ideas of that men do everything and they have to hold the linchpin. They hold everything together. What that means, they have to be strong. They can't show emotions. They have to uphold some standards to society to look like they're strong and they're doing everything right, basically, in terms of definition. I think that's what I've experienced of machismo.
Right. Okay. So I feel like that's pretty common in a lot of Latino or Mexican households, which you are Mexican. I myself, based on the definition, have experienced that. But why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit, specific experiences you might have had or anything you might recall?
Yeah. So the reason I talk about machismo, we're talking about this conversation is it brings a lot of issues with identity or in terms of trying to find out who you are as a person. Machismo makes it so you're being someone else. You can't do certain things because you're seen as weak or am I seen less masculine, and when you're restricted to such a small circle that you don't really get to explore or you don't really get to understand the other sides of identity. And what I mean by that is simple things, just like being able to be scared of something, right? Or be able to laugh, smile and be happy about something, even physically, right? If you aren't seen as strong or something like that, you're seen less of a man. Just those things, those experiences growing up, that affects you long term, right? And especially it affects you when you're told by people you really care about, right? For me, example, my dad always told me that men don't cry. You can't cry. You have to, no matter what happens, no matter how hard it is, you keep pushing, you're strong, right? So when you have those ideas instilled in you your whole life and you see the people you look up to, your role models, continue those cycles. For example, my dad, right? He always told me that. And I've never seen him cry, and I would never always be strong. When you see those things, and it feels like you have to follow it. If not, you're letting them down. It applies a social pressure on you that you have to be like that. That's the right way to do it, right? So those experiences really affects the mental health of us. Because what if I really went through something, or I have the right to feel a certain way, but you just can't because you don't want to be seen weak, right? Or you don't want to let someone down. That's when the issues really start to come up, in terms of identity issues and trying to figure out who you are. Is why can I not cry? Why is it not okay if I started crying right now? Will people see me as less for crying? And those conversations aren't really brought up because, well, one, a lot of us swallow these ideas, right? A lot of us are instilled these ideas that we still follow to this day. But the issue is, when is it going to end? Because it's affecting a lot of people, especially men, right? If we can't express how we really feel about something, that means we carry our whole life without really knowing who we are, because no one knows what we're really going through. and that leads to mental health issues.
So it seems like this has been an issue for a long time, pretty much for what seems to be your life as you know it.
Yeah.
Um, why choose to talk about it now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, like I said, I've been doing poetry for around 6 years now, but, the reason why I started doing this in the first place was for my own self, like taking care of myself. If you can't express how you feel towards someone, then how are you supposed to cope with it? Many have their many different ways to express their emotions, to release like different feelings. But to me, it was writing, right? So I have my journal where like I would write everything, like in terms of like how I would feel if I was upset. So the reason I say this now is because I wrote a poem about toxic masculinity when I was going through it, when I was literally questioning, why can I not cry about this? Why can I not tell my mom that I'm going through this? I wrote it down, and looking back at it, I realized like I've come a long way, because now I can sit here and I can openly talk about this in a conversation with someone who is a man, who having these type of conversations isn't seen normal, right? Like, people wouldn't be having these conversations before, where I had to write it down. I had to keep it to myself to just go through my day, But yeah, so I bring it up now because it took a lot for me to break down these generational cycles. And actually, I'm gonna share the story of why, I was able to break that down. Is so I actually seen my dad cry right in front of me, and I was taking him home one day, and he just started crying to me about. He just started sharing what he was going through, and he started going about this whole thing. And the fact that like I've seen the man who told me not to cry in front of me was it was an experience, because you don't see that, like you don't see a leader cry. You don't see the one you look up to look weak in front of you. But because it's a very vulnerable state of mind and a very vulnerable place to do it in front of someone, like his son, to cry in front of his son who you told your whole life you have to be strong. That to me meant a lot, because it meant that toxic masculinity has gotten so far that you can't even be your own self and you have to be someone else. So to him to cry in front of me, like it was a very bonding experience. I started crying with him too. I'm like, damn, like that's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience to, share your emotions with someone who is going through a hard time, and just being able to open up and actually like share these experiences together. I thought that made him look more of a man than him trying to be not, than him trying to follow those ideas, So that's when I realized that it was okay, but it took a lot for me to break down that generational cycle. Like it's not easy, because even to this day we still uphold those standards to some point, to some extent. But it starts with being able to talk about it and bringing awareness to it.
And to backtrack a little bit, you mentioned that I believe junior year of high school,
Yeah.
7th grade, you wrote that poem.
Yeah.
You said you were experiencing all that. Tell us a little bit about that. So what was that experience that made you write that poem? Like what were you going through?
Yeah, man. So the reason why I wrote this poem, well, first things first is going through family problems with my parents, like them not being together affected me tremendously, because I was raised by my mom, right? And not having my dad around, not having that masculine voice in the back of your head can it guided me away from that toxic masculinity idea for a bit, because I had my mom telling me like, I was experiencing life from a feminine like household. She was the one telling me to do everything. But the reason why I wrote this poem was because I was actually experiencing some issues with myself and the way people would see me as, right? I realized that because the way people would describe me wasn't the way I saw myself, right? Like if I was to ask someone, oh, tell me about Edgar, like the things I would say was not what I thought people would say. Like it's not me. And that came with not being able to express myself, right? A lot of times I would like talk to myself in my head. I'm like, why are people viewing me like this? Like that's not who I am. Like only if they knew what I went through, like growing up with my parents, all the stuff I have to go back home to. That's a conversation that's not seen. So this is what I call the idea that is misunderstood. We have two identities, the outside and the inside one, the exterior and interior. They don't understand the interior part, but why? That's when I started to break it down, was because it all goes back to generations where you're taught not to talk about these things. You're not taught to talk about your problems, your experiences growing up, and how it makes you feel, because that would change how other people would see you. Me having this conversation is going to make me seem different than if I didn't have this conversation and we're doing something different. So me realizing that people aren't seeing me for who I really am and for what I'm upholding affected me tremendously, because I know that that's not me. And I've been through a lot in my life, and I needed people to know who I really am for what I've really been through. And especially with my hopes and goals of like expressing and bringing awareness about issues, it had to start with me. So that's when I wrote this poem. But it took me I did this junior year, almost 5 years for me to even like proceed to go on about this poem. So it says a lot, because I'm still not done yet. I'm still not done trying to figure out and trying to like fully escape from toxic masculinity, because it's not easy, but it's a start.
That's good. You talked about seeing your dad cry, and he's a very leader. He's a present leader in your life. How were you able to move past that in a growth mindset? How did you basically not shut down from that?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of not being able to shut down, when I seen him break down in front of me as I was taking him home. So that moment, I didn't see him any less of a man. If anything, I saw it as it healed me. It healed a part of me. And from that moment on, I respected my dad so much more, because he was willing to do something that I know someone else couldn't do. And him to do it in front of me and tell me like how much I meant to him and stuff like really expressing himself what you wouldn't see a dad really do all the time. It motivated me even more to really change that view, and I really saw the problem with why men are the way they are sometimes, because they don't have that space, and sometimes they don't have that figure to like guide them through that process. Thankfully, I saw my dad as a leader for me now even more, because he was able to guide me through an important phase of my life where I didn't know who I was. And it set the foundation for me to figure out who I really am, and not being afraid to be who I am, and openly express myself about the way that I feel. So every time, it didn't shut me off, because instead I used that as motivation to continue on to understand myself and openly express myself through my art.
And by bringing this poem, so you wrote it back in 11th grade, it was kind of to yourself?
Yeah, this was to myself, yeah.
So by bringing this poem back into today's world and kind of to a public view, what is your intention with it? What is the message you want to get across?
Just combining the whole story together, right, is you have someone who's lost throughout their journey in a culture where men have to uphold these social ideas and, be a certain way. How does that affect an individual, right? And this is where my major and applications of what I'm studying come in play, is how does society shape people, right? How has it shaped our life growing up? If there's anything that I could go back and change, is I wish that I would have had someone have these conversations with me to make it seem like I'm not going crazy or I'm not like anything less. So this is the whole point, is to bring awareness about this issue, to help the next generation leaders understand that it doesn't make them any less to express themselves. And if anything, like, it brings a lot of perspective, and it opens up doors to being able to understand different stories of people. So that's the goal with this whole poem, and bringing this topic up is a sign for change and a sign of awareness that needs to be understood from society, that, men don't have to continue to uphold these standards no more, because it's only hurting us. And there's a lot of people going through issues that we never talk about. And they're going through it, but they just don't talk about it, and it has to start somewhere, So my goal is to bring awareness to these issues and, really engage the conversation of what are we teaching our next generation leaders, right? To be strong or to be themselves. There's two different things. Being strong and being themselves are two different things, because, all the things you're told not to do and what to do, and you have to work and you have to be the breadwinner. So many ideas that are brought up to you, so much pressure too that comes with it, And overall, it affects all of us in some certain way.
We want to use this idea of strong in quotations, because you can't be yourself and be strong, but you just gotta change the definition of what it is to be strong.
Yeah.
With that being said, what is your target audience? Would it be someone in college, say freshman, high school,
Man.
maybe as young as middle school?
Honestly, this is dedicated to everybody, to understand the stories of, what individuals go through, because honestly, this is intended to bring perspective of these stories. I know mostly, if anything, is to the youth, to the ones who are upcoming, the ones who are, about to graduate high school, or, like they're going through phases where they're trying to figure out who they're going to be in the future, right? They're trying to figure out what their future is going to look like. It's really intended to bring awareness, not even awareness, just to question if what you have been taught feels right to you. Does it really feel right to you? Does it feel right that you can't just tell your mom how you feel about what something happened at school, or like how you feel when your girlfriend broke up with you? How does it really feel, right? Or do you have to front about it? Does that feel right to you? Or would it feel better if you were able to tell these stories and like share it with someone you really cared about? That's the main goal. It's like, can we break those cycles down now? That's the goal, and it's to the youth mostly though.
Beautiful. Well, that's all I have for you. Any closing remarks you might want to give out?
And so just the only thing is, this poem is called Toxic Masculinity, and it goes like this.